There are many names for this seemingly inoffensive body of water. Cape Hawke Harbour or the mouth of the Wollamba River are just two. But thousands of boating enthusiasts flock to the entrance to Wallace Lake at Foster Tuncurry every summer without realising the danger lurking just below the surface. A new breakwater built a decade ago on the ocean side of the bridge at Tuncurry has changed current flows. Shifting sand and speeding tidal flows have exposed an old rock wall.
Rocks were initially put there at the turn of the century by the loggers so they could bring the coastal freighters up and load the logs directly onto or use it as a training wall for the channel itself.
Peter Caves owns Boatland Marine at Tuncurry and is also on the Waterways Committee advising the Great Lakes Council on issues affecting boating safety. He claims several craft have already come to grief and wants something done before anyone is seriously hurt or even killed. Mr Caves says the material in the old rock wall could be recycled to advantage by building a new training wall.
It's going to stop the current flow on run-out tide, reduce it from 10 knots down to 2 knots. It'll stop foreshore erosion due to the slowing down of the current. It'll also help stop boats from sinking and being damaged through a bad southerly blow, which we get here quite often.
An application has already been made to have the work done, and it's hoped bureaucratic red tape can be cleared away in time to have the job finished by the coming summer tourist season.
It sounds an unlikely combination, but chooks that eat fish oil lay healthier eggs. It's a principle Eskimos have known about for years.
Well, basically in about 76 they found that Eskimos didn't have very much cardio heart problems and a lot of the problems that we in Western society have.
By eating fish, Eskimos take in an abundance of the polyunsaturated fatty acid omega-3. It cleanses the bloodstream and is believed to be essential in brain and eye development in infants. While Australians have moved toward a polyunsaturated diet, we're still not getting enough omega-3. That's where the CSIRO and the Ringle Valley Egg Farm near Newcastle step in. By blending fish and linseed oils, they've come up with a new chicken feed.
So we can feed the hen and she biologically then converts that into the egg and produces an egg high in omega-3, very similar to high concentrations of omega-3 found in fish.
One such egg goes a long way to supplying the recommended daily intake of omega-3. Further developments could lead to a cholesterol-free egg within 6 months.
But they've always been a little concerned about eating them because of the cholesterol problem. What we've produced here is a very pleasant way of people being able to eat themselves to good health.
The old breakwater is on the ocean side of the bridge at Tuncurry. It's changed tidal flows and caused sand to shift to the extent of now exposing an old rock wall.
Rocks were initially put there at the turn of the century by the loggers so they could bring the coastal freighters up and load the logs directly onto or use it as a training wall for the channel itself.
Mr Caves claims several craft have already come to grief and wants something done before anyone is seriously hurt or even killed. He suggests the old rock wall material could be used to build a new training wall which would reduce the current flow of run-out tide from 10 to 2 knots, therefore easing foreshore erosion. An application to do the work is currently with the Public Works Department.
These weekend warriors put their faith in one another as they take a step that many wouldn't think of. It's a training exercise for the members of the University of Newcastle's Army Cadet Unit. Kylie Gibson is a computer sciences student. Private Gibson, quite a different way to spend your Saturday morning.
Not really.
You do this quite often?
Yeah, quite often, yeah. An adventure.
It takes skill and courage to abseil a 35-metre drop at Carrington's grain silos, and sometimes a little persuasion. By the way, the unit is always on the lookout for new recruits. All tracks lead to the old Newcastle basketball stadium. A colossal collection of miniature railway models. There are working scale and static displays built to themes such as country Australia, US and European towns and villages. Some modellers have created living layouts with intricate attention to detail. Stopped for a while at Kennebec County on a summer day in 1945. The model railway seemed to bridge any age gap.
To me, it's been a lifelong hobby.
The little things in life mean a lot to some. There's also a bonsai exhibition at the Lake Macquarie Police Citizens Youth Club. It's art mirroring nature. Trained trees that may have grown tall instead make delicate pot plants.
Nine to 4 on and favourite, 13 to 2 and 9 to 2. The 7th was the Tooheys Red Handicap, another crackerjack field. $14 to 1, 11 to 4 and 50 to 1. The unplaced favourite at 5 to 2, Let's Hurry. At Moonee Valley it was the Manikato Stakes over 1200 metres. $7 to 4 and favourite, 20 to 1 and 4 to 1. This year a concerted effort was made to attract more local competitors and it worked a treat with numbers up by 50%. 65 contested the individual event and there were 20 teams. The object of the exercise, complete a 5 kilometre run followed by a 30k bike ride and finished off with a little 5k jog home. While most people worked up a healthy sweat, some took a more leisurely outlook to Sunday. Others were content to watch the passing parade of finely tuned athletes. Jeff Cook from Cronulla was first off the bike, but just behind was Michael Haynes and those two settled down to fight out the finish. And it was Cook who breasted the tape first in a time of 1 hour 20.45 minutes with Haynes second. Australia's World Triathlon representative Georgie Harwood was the first female home, only 18 minutes behind Cook. Eastern Conflict from Mutinous and Mordred, the time 1:24.16.
They were off and racing at a leisurely pace in the Northern Rivers Vintage and Veteran Car Rally. Held over 2 days, these mechanical masterpieces went on a tour of the countryside through Dunoon, Rosebank and Kurrabell. Last night they were back in Lismore for a mid-race celebration dinner, then off again this morning for the second leg of the rally. The winners weren't judged on who made it home first, rather on the appearance of the cars. The 140 members of the English choir were busy rehearsing this morning for their recital at Coff Civic Centre tonight. Aged between 15 and 21, these singers were chosen from across Great Britain.
Logistics of moving 140 people around the world is quite unusual, to say the least. It's like trying to shift a 747 from city to city without an airport.
The program is varied with works by German, Italian and French composers. Many of the items were unaccompanied.
This was the scene in Newcastle's inner-city suburb of Wickham shortly after 11 last night, the alarm raised by a next-door neighbour. 2 men were inside the rented premises at the time of the fire, one occupant jumping to safety through a front window. A 30-year-old man was trapped in a back room, 2 passers-by becoming his unexpected rescuers.
There was flames coming out of the house everywhere. Me and me mate Hed here, we darted around the side, we belted the window in. Then we went round the back and we knocked another window in. We ripped a heap of palings off the back fence. We knocked the door down, mate, and this guy, we found him halfway up the hall.
Onlookers have hailed the efforts of Greg and helper Stephen Phillips as nothing short of heroic. It's believed the fire started in the lounge room at the front of the house, spreading quickly throughout the weatherboard cottage. Firefighters had the blaze under control within an hour, most of the house gutted, 2 back rooms suffering smoke and water damage. The 2 male boarders were taken to John Hunter Hospital and were treated for minor burns and smoke inhalation. As Newcastle Police Scientific sifted through the rubble today looking for the fire's cause, for Julie, the 3rd occupant of the Union Street house who was out at the time of the fire, there was little left to reclaim. The cause of the fire is still undetermined. However, Police Scientific say it's unlikely to have been electrical. With the 2 occupants known smokers, officers aren't ruling out cigarettes as a cause. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It was real semi-final football with the odd flare-up as you would expect. Walker had the best chance in the first half, but Simon Burnett not able to handle on the end of the movement. Charlie Darlington put Barraba in the lead, and the reply from Michael Crawford was an absolute ripper. In the second half, it was David Banovich who seized on an opportunity. An intercept deep in his own half, and he put the accelerator down, and Barraba were through to the final. For 2 days, 168 surfers have revelled in the near-perfect conditions, and the standard has been excellent. Competitors came from as far away as Merimbula in the south of the state and the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and all the traditional longboard events were contested. In the ladies, it was a win for local lass Jenny Sheehan, and in the juniors, Malcolm Bell was successful. In the 9-foot Malibu, Laurieton's Ian Goodacre proved too good for the rest, and in the 8-foot event, Jay Livingston from the Central Coast won the day. In the Old Mal contest, former world champion Stuart Entwistle turned on a spectacular display to outclass his rivals.
The Inverell man was travelling west along Gumflat Road about 10 o'clock last night. The headlights of his vehicle failed and the utility left the road. It came to rest on its side near a dam. The man was trapped by the hand. Although police and ambulance were called, passers-by were able to release him. He was taken to Inverell Hospital for treatment. From humble beginnings, Walker Hospital has grown with the community it has served for a century.
Over the years, the hospital's role has changed quite substantially. In the early days, it was primarily curative, dealing with such things as terminal cases for diphtheria and typhoid.
Chief Executive Officer Gary Reynolds says Walker now has an integrated health service.
I'm pleased to say that the service that we have at Walker is very broad and very diverse. It's not just a hospital as it once was.
Nurses dressed in period costumes to commemorate the occasion. The town joined in a street procession and fete in Manhattan Park, and a book was written to mark this special birthday.
That not only covers the history of the health service in the area, but also the history of Walker, and many prominent buildings are also featured in that book.
Gary Reynolds says it's hoped the health service will be further expanded by establishing a community health centre in town. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
About half a dozen humpbacks interrupted their progress for some heavyweight horsing around in the coastal waters. Spectators got a clear view of the whales as they played in the choppy conditions, sometimes less than 2 kilometres off the coastline. Others reported seeing the 60 to 70 tonne giants leaping full length from the water, but they toned down their performance as the afternoon wore on, clearly showing as much interest in the helicopter as the crew was showing in them. The whales continued their southward journey, clipping along at a leisurely pace and moving steadily away from the coastline, where their aquatic revels will continue without an audience. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
It was a day of fun and the profits went to a good cause. Although admission was free, the show bags and part of the profits from stores on site went to Apex's Child Protection Trust. The organisation plans to establish a 008 counselling service for abused children. It hopes to raise several $1 million as part of a national campaign.
And it was the defending premiers who were on the board after only 3 minutes. The Tigers allowed the bomb to bounce, and Gary Nosworthy was Johnny on the spot, and he scored. Wingham, however, responded to the challenge, and after constant pressure on the Port line, it cracked. Paul Andrews beat tackles close to the line, and all of a sudden it was 6-all. In the 23rd minute, Port made a bad blue losing the ball, and pouncing on the opportunity was Martin Hannon, and he raced away to score. 12-6 at the break, and 3 minutes after the restart, Wingham led 14-6 courtesy of a penalty goal. Then Port started to fire. Ashley Miller scored in the corner, and Port were well and truly back in the match. Enter Greg Baggett on the field for less than a minute, and he put man of the match Michael Cameron away, and the scores were locked together at 14-all. And 5 minutes before the final siren, Baggett lobbed a pass to David Pensini, and he didn't let his mates down, and Port Macquarie had triumphed 20 points to 14.
Each year, Better Hearing Australia's Newcastle branch members vote on the television presenter most easily understood by those with impaired hearing. Since Chris is on holiday, backpacking through Thailand, and as yet quite unaware of the honour, I accepted the trophy on her behalf at the Deafness Awareness Week lunch today from the Lord Mayor, Alderman John McNaughton. The importance of lip reading to the deaf was highlighted also, with a Singleton woman, Bev O'Toole, judged the best lip reader in a nationwide competition. Another aspect of making life easier for the deaf will be highlighted on NBN tonight at 7:30 when we present Silence Broken. It's a locally produced documentary about Lake Macquarie 10-year-old Paul Walker, who's been fitted with the latest electronic hearing aid, the cochlear implant. But more than this, it looks at the issues raised by technological advances being developed for the handicapped.
Can't hear any noise at all.
Oh, you're picking that up.
animation, happy faces, happy people.
Midway through the first half of yesterday's game and the Knights looked on target for a win.
We started the game as well as any other game we've played in this year. I was particularly pleased with our first 30 minutes or thereabouts.
Then the wheels began to fall off, the half-time penalty count 9-2 in Brisbane's favour.
I thought we'd shed the tag as being the bad boys of the league in the last 12 months, and all of a sudden we're not disciplined and we're up to our old tricks.
Among their reprimands, sin binning lock Mark Glanville and halfback Matthew Rodwell.
The decisions of the sin bin had a major influence on the game. Everyone now knows that the try from Kevin Walters wasn't a try.
Waite spent today reviewing the game some saw as rife with controversial refereeing decisions. He's compiled a tape of instances he describes as inconsistent decisions. This he'll send to New South Wales Rugby League headquarters tomorrow. And that's where it ends. There'll be no official complaint lodged. He says the game is now history and Sunday's clash with Canberra the priority. He expects everyone to be fit for the game. The only player shrouded by doubt is David Mullane, who injured his shoulder yesterday. But question marks could also be placed against Mark Sargent and Brad Godden, who are both suffering concussion. This week, Wake says it's training as usual. No new strategies, just maintaining the routine. He also believes the community can help.
Playing at home is a bonus, playing in front of your home crowd is a bonus. That sometimes affects decisions that referees make.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Tony Windsor considers himself to be a long-time supporter of reintroducing capital punishment. But the MP says if laws are rewritten to include the death sentence, it would only be an option.
But I must stress that it's only in cases where there's absolutely no doubt, and the option probably wouldn't be used very often, but in those extreme cases like the Anita Cobby, little Ebony Simpson, those sorts of cases, I believe that that option should be available.
Mr Windsor said dozens of voters had telephoned him during the weekend requesting moves to be made to have capital punishment reintroduced. The community has been spurred into action after the murder of 9-year-old Bargo schoolgirl Ebony Simpson.
Having a 9-year-old daughter of my own who happens to meet a school bus, I can identify with the problem. And if that happened to my daughter, the death penalty would exist because I'd be administering it.
Mr Windsor intends to canvass public support and also write to fellow parliamentarians to gauge their reaction. If there is sufficient concern in the community, he proposes to introduce a private member's bill in an attempt to have the laws changed.
I don't believe that the people who perpetrate those sorts of crimes should be accommodated for the rest of their lives by the taxpayers. I believe there should be an option which is only used when there is absolutely no doubt that those people will be taken out of society.
The normally quiet Davis Street erupted early this afternoon as thick smoke belched from the weatherboard cottage. Bushfire brigades from neighbouring Paxton, Belbert and Corobalong were quickly on the scene, but by the time Cessnock Brigade arrived, the house had been engulfed. Firemen wore breathing apparatus to battle the smoke. The rear of the dwelling was destroyed in the blaze. No one was in the house at the time. At this stage, authorities believe the fire started in a pot-bellied stove. Investigations are continuing. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
David Parsons usually performs on the two largest pipe organs in Australia, but next week he'll be playing on one of the smallest. It's claimed the Church of the Good Shepherd in the village of Bexhill near Lismore is the smallest church in Australia to have a pipe organ. David has given organ recitals at the Sydney Opera House and the Town Hall, and he's expected to pack the 65-seater church. He's been playing the organ from the age of 8 and has had many highlights during his musical career, including the inaugural concert at the Opera House in 1979, 3 recordings, and he's an assistant organist to the City of Sydney. David will present a non-classical program at Bexhill next Wednesday night, featuring music from stage and screen such as Phantom of the Opera, 42nd Street and Cats.
The recent spate of fatal accidents has focused attention on the Pacific Highway north of Newcastle, while Murray today inspected roads in the Taree area, as well as progress on the Rainbow Flat deviation south of Taree. Mr Murray believes many of the accidents on the highway are the result of human error.
The tag killer highway is just untrue, and it frightens people away from the place. The fact is that the problems are human problems that can apply to anywhere.
The Roads Minister points to driver fatigue as being a major problem, which is the target of an upcoming campaign. It will feature special signposting, community promotions and advertising containing a simple message.
We just have to get the message over to people that you are driving a car that can kill people if you don't drive it properly, if you don't take care.
An increased incidence of golden staph has been detected at the John Hunter. In July, 16 patients were found to have the infection, and so far this month, 5 cases have been discovered. An antibiotic-resistant golden staph in a hospital is something that most doctors dread. Once a patient acquires the infection, their wounds can become infected.
Because of the infection, because usually they're recovering from the operation or something like that they've had, and if they get an infection it then just delays that recovery.
Hospital Administrator Stephen Batts says the bacteria was identified early before patients developed symptoms.
As soon as we detected the colonisations, we went into a higher phase of infection control procedures at the hospital.
Golden staph is common in hospitals around the country. Stephen Batts says the John Hunter has a smaller incidence than other East Coast hospitals. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Heavily armed Special Weapons Police converged on an isolated farmhouse north of Lostock Dam late this morning. Residents of the property said a 56-year-old neighbouring farmer had started shooting for no apparent reason.
Max, my son, came in and said, "Jack's gone mad." He took after me, shooting at me with a gun. He shot Max's horse. I saw him shoot it, tied to the fence.
The gunman peppered the farmhouse with 6 .22 calibre rounds while the terrified residents lay low trying to reason with the man. He then headed for the surrounding foothills seeking refuge in his small cabin. SWAS police secured the high ground around the shack and settled in for a drawn-out waiting game.
Well, we're at a standstill at the moment, and until such times as we get some response from the negotiators, we're not going to do anything.
The main concern police had was for the welfare of the gunman's 2 elderly brothers living on properties adjoining the shack. They hadn't been seen since the drama began, and it was feared a long-running family feud may have gone too far. Occasionally, the gunman appeared at the window or outside his small cabin, still carrying a firearm. It was feared he may have several hundred rounds of ammunition and a number of high-powered rifles. At about 2:30, police negotiators finally made contact with him. Another tense hour passed, and then relief. SWAS officers were airlifted aboard the NBN helicopter to outlying properties to confirm that the remaining brothers were safe as the gunman was brought out of the hills and whisked in police custody to Maitland for questioning. A search is continuing tonight for weapons believed to be hidden in a cache somewhere in the hillside. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
At today's seminar in Newcastle, Leslie McPaul, speaking on behalf of the state government, was selling the merits of school councils. These councils contain school staff, parent and community representatives and enable shared decision-making on matters like the school aims and its budget plan.
Here's an opportunity for parents and teachers to work together in a partnership, and those schools that have it will feel a greater pride in ownership of their school and will be more supportive of each other and of the students.
Ms McPaul believes the number of councils in government schools isn't high enough. In the North Coast and North West regions, around half of all schools have a council. In the Hunter, it's less than 30%. Another topic Ms McPaul will be addressing during her statewide tour is the school's right to choose issue, which gives parents a say in the selection of classroom teachers. She says the issue, which is open for public comment until October 1st, has gained unwarranted caution from the Teachers Federation, which claims parents are not qualified to select classroom teachers.
Parents are quite astute when it comes to knowing what suits their school, and certainly training courses are provided. Any of the parents that go onto the panels would have been through a training course.
Should the state government's selection initiative get the green light, Ms McPaul expects it to become policy from next year. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
So far in season 1992, Western Suburbs have been outstanding, undefeated in first grade and minor premiers in all 3 grades, with first and third grade already through to the grand final, giving them the club championship. With that record, it's no wonder they dominated the awards last night. West Centre Darren Tracy is the Tooheys Cup leading try scorer with 26, breaking several records on the way to his award. Neil Baker missed out on a grand final win last year, but he has the Rosellas in this year's decider and undefeated, and you couldn't go past the former Winfield Cup star as Coach of the Year. As usual, Curry's Phil Williams was the leading point scorer in the league. Cessnock's Bill Peden was named the Players' Player of the Year. West Tony Price, the most outstanding representative player of the season, and the Rosellas' lock Brett Hode has had a brilliant year, winning the Player of the Year award by a staggering 8 points, with all and sundry agreeing that Hode has been in a class of his own this year. And for only the 3rd time in its history, the NRL awarded life membership to an outsider. Long-time league correspondent with the Newcastle Herald, Jack Farrell, who will retire after this year's grand final, was given the code's highest honour for a lifetime spent reporting Newcastle Rugby League. Well done, Jack.